Good evening and welcome back. How does the ANCA influence and guide US policy on matters of interest to the Armenian American community, and what are the priorities of this organization concerning Armenia and Artsakh? My guest today is Aram Hamparian, the Executive Director of the Armenian National Committee of America. Stay tuned. Mr. Hamparian, thank you so much for joining me from Washington, D.C.
Thank you for having me. It's very, very kind of you, Anush. Thank you.
Mr. Hamparian, let's start with the priorities of the Armenian National Committee of America. What's on your agenda today?
Okay, well, first of all, let me say that our agenda is the safety and security of the Armenian homeland. Everything that we undertake is aligned with that goal, that North Star, Mer Hussein Aska. So Artsakh, of course, is on the front lines, is the highest priority for our community today. The security of Artsakh, the security of Armenia now, Sunnik is under threat as well. That agenda falls into several categories. We have very urgently the question of the prisoners of war. We have the urgent need of humanitarian assistance for Artsakh, for those who remain in Artsakh, those who were forced from Artsakh and now live in Armenia. We also have the question of Section 907, which is the military assistance that the United States is sending to Azerbaijan, even after they committed the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh last year, even while they are occupying Armenian territory in Sunnik, and even as they torture and abuse the more than 200 Armenian prisoners that they continue to hold hostage. It is absolutely unacceptable to us that our American tax dollars are funding this oil-rich dictatorship in Azerbaijan, even as they commit such violent and vile acts of aggression against the Armenian people. So there are other issues as well, certainly the preservation of our cultural monuments and things of that. More broadly, the security issues dealing with Armenia that we're working on. But I would say, Anush, at the very top of our agenda are the cutting the military aid to Azerbaijan, securing humanitarian assistance to Artsakh, and securing the release of our prisoners.
The signals coming from the White House are confusing. On the one hand, President Biden recognizes the Armenian genocide, and on the other hand, he extends the waiver of the Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act, providing military assistance to Azerbaijan. So while Armenians get moral support, the Azerbaijanis receive real US dollars for their military build-up. What do you think? How you can shape this US policy toward Armenia and Azerbaijan on this issue?
Okay, first of all, you're absolutely right. What's happened is an outrage. There's a famous poem by the poet T.S. Eliot, and it starts with, "April is the cruelest month." And there is an aspect of utter cruelty to matching honesty, overdue honesty that we and the world were owed for decades, matching that honesty with a blind eye to Azerbaijani aggression, even worse, aiding and abetting that aggression by providing their military with money. So what happened here is that there was a recognition, as you noted, of the past at the level of a moral pronouncement. And then at the practical level, green light, business as usual, nothing to see here. The military assistance continues. And you can see this, Anush, in the timing of the two things. One was on Saturday the 24th, before the ink was dry. Yelena Chorchevetsov, I guess. Yet by Monday, they sent a notice to Congress saying, we're going to green light. We will open the door to military assistance to Baku. Now, let me say this. That's deeply troubling, and we're fighting it as aggressively as we can. I do, however, believe that U.S. policy will come into more alignment with the genocide recognition. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of perseverance. We're not giving up on that at all. The urgent task right now is to stop the weapons, stop the arms, stop the aid to Azerbaijan. But at the more macro level, the meta level, we are going to turn U.S. policy away from backing Turkish and Azerbaijan's efforts to continue the Armenian genocide. It stands to reason. The U.S. system is slow, very slow to do the right thing. They were slow to recognize the Armenian genocide, and they're slow even now to pivot from that recognition toward a policy that doesn't is not complicit in Turkey and Azerbaijan's efforts to complete the crime that we just recognized. We're going to get there. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to be the right thing for Armenia. It's going to be the right thing for America. But that is where we are today. We're not in a good spot. And the Biden administration really missed an opportunity to do the right thing and has really gone down the wrong path here.
Following up the topic of the US aid, you mentioned that the State Department, in its response to the members of Congress, failed to address 6 key priorities raised by over 100 congressmen regarding Armenia and Artsakh. So POWs, Turkey's involvement in the 44-day war, and so on. And among these concerns, we see that there is no clear commitment from the USA side regarding the humanitarian assistance to Armenia and Artsakh. What does this mean? No more US aid to Armenia and Artsakh?
Well, it's really amazing, Anush. Let's look at the facts. In January of this year, under the previous administration, USAID wrote a letter to Congress saying, we have sent $5 million for all the victims, all those affected by this conflict, not aggression, conflict. Then in May of this year, the letter that you reference, the letter in which they did not answer 6 different points raised by members of Congress, they cite the number again, $5 million. Well, if the number was $5 million under Trump in January, and the number is still $5 million under Biden in May, I think it's fair to conclude that they have not sent any additional aid in those intervening 4 months. And that is very troubling. Anush, if I could go over just briefly those 6 points, that they're all really important. The points that Congress raised, but that were entirely ignored by this assistant secretary who wrote the letter, right? Every one of them is important. There's one that doesn't stand out maybe the most, but is maybe the most important one. They call Azerbaijan's attack, its unprovoked, unilateral, belligerence, cross-border attack, displacing and destroying and killing Armenians upon their indigenous homeland. They don't call it out for aggression. They simply use the phrase conflict. And I think their unwillingness to identify who initiated this aggression is maybe the foundation upon which all the other misrepresentations rest. So instead of saying, Azerbaijan clearly said they were going to attack, they attacked, they took credit for attacking, they boasted for attacking, and yet our government, even as Azerbaijan is proud, exhibits great boasts of its aggression, our government is showing such restraint in not calling out either side, even when Azerbaijan is proud and publicly so of its aggression. I think that's just a fundamental failing on the part of both the Trump people and the Biden people. If they can't call out Azerbaijan, if at this state, months and months after the cessation of major hostilities, so now we're seeing new hostilities against Sunni, if after all these months, our government, my government, cannot even identify the aggressor, then I think we're going to have problems, and we are having problems on the assistance to Artsakh and Armenia, on cutting off military aid to Baku, on the release of our prisoners, on accountability. This is one of the points raised in the letter, Anush, on the accountability for the U.S. parts that were found in the Turkish Bayraktar drones that killed so many Armenians, civilians and soldiers. Those were U.S. parts. These are potential violations of U.S. arms export control laws, and yet, we're not seeing the level of investigation into those parts and technology that we should. And I think it all flows from, well, the U.S. is just washing its hands of it. The Armenians once again crucified on a Caspian oil rig, while the powerful in Washington and elsewhere, wash their hands of our blood. And this is unacceptable to us, and this is the focus of our efforts, Anush.
A week ago, Secretary Blinken said that he discussed the Karabakh issue with his French counterpart, indicating the need for a long-term solution for Karabakh conflict. Meanwhile, we see that the other side of the conflict, Azerbaijani president thinks that the Karabakh issue is solved. What do you think? Is USA able to push for the restoration of the negotiations under the What do you think? Is USA able to push for the restoration of the negotiations under the auspices of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairmanship?
Let me say this. Left to themselves, the administration, this administration and the previous administration did not really lift a finger and has not done much at all. This discussion of, we need a comprehensive solution is not backed up by anything meaningful, such as an aid program for Artsakh and Armenia, cutting off military to Azerbaijan, securing the release of Armenian POWs, getting Azerbaijani forces out of Sunik. So when there's this discussion at the level of rhetoric about, well, we need a comprehensive resolution, and then a lack of action on the actual thing, the stuff of peace, the stuff of a long-term resolution, the conclusion that we draw is left to themselves, they'll, as I said, wash their hands of this. This is where we must step in, working with members of Congress, working with coalition partners, and to push the American government to do the right thing. We did that, Anush, on the Armenian genocide issue. We were fought mercilessly. We were attacked, we were mocked, we were ridiculed, we were marginalized for decades on end to make a change in US policy that now all Americans acknowledge was the right thing to do. We must do the same thing on Artsakh. This is about freedom. This is about self-determination. We're not asking for the people of Artsakh any more rights than we enjoy as Americans, to live under a government of our choosing, that derives its just powers from the consent of the governed, not from an oil-rich dictator. So I would say this, that America very often does the wrong thing, but America sometimes wants to do the right thing if enough Americans care deeply enough about the issue and they put their shoulder to the wheel and work on the issue. And that's what we're doing. We're going to help America do the right thing here. It's taking longer than we wanted. It is much more frustrating than any of us wanted, but that is our task. So I think that there's a foreign policy establishment, Democrat, Republican, that is short-sighted and frankly opportunistic on issues such as this, and they defer to Erdogan's threats, or they defer to Aliyev's oil and Caspian energy leverage. But there's also the right thing to do, and we're pushing the United States to do the right thing.
Now let's turn to the diaspora motherland issues. How does the Armenian American community see its role in the life of Armenia and Artsakh? And what's the public discourse after the 44-day war and on the Armenia's current situation?
I think we just have to increase our engagement on every level to serve and to sacrifice in a selfless way, the way that a parent might do for a child. Whatever the child needs to be strong and healthy, to be protected, must be done. There's no choice. If there are temptations among diasporans sometimes to view Armenia as a parent and to complain about this thing that's happening or that thing that's happening, that's has to be left in the past. Armenia is and Hayastan, our homeland, our Haydanik, is the thing that we must sacrifice everything for. Sacrifice everything for. Now, our work, Anush, is the political channel, right? So we take the Armenian community in America. Haytat is active in Canada and South America and Europe and in Asia and Middle East. But our job here in the US is to harvest our political energies and then direct them in very, very narrow channels like POWs, aid to Artsakh, cutting off military aid to Azerbaijan, our churches and monasteries, things, sort of picking 4 or 5 key targets and focusing laser-like on them. And we just have to increase our energy level. That's what we have to do, increase the number of people and how hard those people are working. But clearly after the war, Anush, I would say that we need to expand even further other channels. I know there's been some economic engagement with Armenia, with Artsakh. I think we need to move into the security realm and consider how can we materially contribute to the physical safety of Artsakh and Armenia. How can we physically contribute? And there are ways that don't involve working with governments, not connecting. This is not something where we work indirectly through Washington to affect what's happening in the homeland. I think Armenian Americans who have resources, who have expertise, who have knowledge, who have assets and other abilities have to bring those to bear on the physical protection of the homeland. That's not necessarily an ANCA project, but it's an important project. And I've seen some progress on that front. We need to, invest, 10 times more, 100 times more in these efforts, because everything is possible if our people are safe, and nothing is possible if they're not.
Mr. Hamparian, I thank you very much for your time and for the interview.
Thank you so much, Anush. Call anytime. Thank you for all your excellent work.